Good morning, good afternoon, well, whatever, good afternoon. This is the continuation of Judges chapter 6 and Judges chapter 7. If you saw the last video that I did, you can probably tell that I'm doing them back to back to back, but I'm keeping them shorter. But anyhow, we're talking in verse 1 through 10, 1 through 12, about self-perception. And now self-perception, how God sees your potential and who you are, who you can be, and we see our faults and who we are not and who we think we really are. Okay, so we're going to go on to we're going to back up and go with verse 13 or verse 12. It says, the angel of the Lord appeared unto him. This is Gideon, of course, and said, the Lord is with you, you mighty man of valor. And we talked about how the mighty man of valor is how God saw Gideon, how God identified Gideon, how God saw his potential. Okay, and Gideon's response here is a good indication of how he feels about himself, what kind of state of mind he's in. And it's a very human emotion, a very human reaction. So verse 13, he says, then Gideon said to him, O my Lord, if the Lord is with us, then why has all this happened to us? Why has all that happened to us? Where are all the miracles that our fathers told us about? They said, did not the Lord bring us out of Egypt? Yet now the Lord has forsaken us and delivered us into the hands of the Midianites. Now, Gideon doesn't seem to understand something. Now, the reason there is because of sin. Now, the reason that they're in this predicament they're in is because of sin. If you look at the first verse of Judges chapter 6, it says, the children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord, so the Lord gave them into the hands of Midian for 7 years. They did evil in the sight of the Lord. And for Gideon was probably at this point, he was probably a young man, probably in his 20s, I don't know. Maybe his 30s, I don't know. But he lived a lot of his life, or some of his formative years at least, probably, under this dominion of Midian. Okay? So he probably wasn't in the whole mix of what the actual sin was. Maybe he just thought it was a normal thing to do. But God saw it as sin. So he was saying, where's God? Where's God? All this happening, all this stuff they told us about, where's God? You know? So he says, then the Lord turned to him and said, go in his strength of yours, save Israel from the control of Midian. Have I not sent you? Now see, this is something I talked about perceptions last time, and I'm talking about perceptions this time. But this is something that God has to do, has to understand, that or God is telling us we have to understand, okay, that God has a call on every one of us. He said, have I not sent you? Have I not sent you? He's calling Gideon to fight this fight, or at least lead the charge of this fight, okay? And by calling him a mighty man of valor, he said, have I not sent you? And he said to him, O my Lord, how can I save Israel? Now this is the picture of Gideon's heart, the picture of Gideon's perception of himself. Listen to Gideon, verse 15, I think it's 15. And he said to him, O my Lord, how can I save Israel? Indeed, my clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the youngest in my father's house. Okay, what is that? We have to understand rank at first. Rank, okay? The children of Israel had rank, and they still do. There is still rank in the Jewish understanding, the Israeli understanding, Jewish understanding. There is still rank, okay? Now, Now, Manasseh was the weakest clan of the 12 tribes, the weakest of the 12, and he was the youngest. So that meant if there was a chain, picture a chain, if there was a chain that represented the children of Israel, Gideon would have been the weakest one. The one that would be the first one to go, be the first one to give in, the first one to break under pressure. The first one that would not even be considered for this kind of work, because he's the weakest. We're looking at God. The whole mentality of the children of Israel this day was the ones that they thought God should use were the biggest, strongest, the first, most powerful tribe, all of these things. But let me tell you something, okay? Let me tell you something. God says in His Word that He uses the weak to confound the wise. I'm going to ask you something. Do you feel like the weakest? Do you feel like the weakest? Do you feel like God can't use you? Do you feel like God has departed from you? Do you feel like that? Let me tell you something. If you feel like that, you need to get on your face before God and pray that He give you His perception of you, to give you strength to continue on the fight. Continue on this fight of faith. Okay? Gideon had to have that. Gideon had to have that. He was the weakest. He thought, I'm the weakest. I'm the weakest. God uses the weak to confound the wise. Okay? So that means there is no respecter of person. The Bible says God is no respecter of person. Doesn't matter who you are, God can still use you. So that's what's important to understand. Okay? That's what's important to understand. Gideon says, I'm the weakest. God can't use me. No. God uses the weak to confound the wise. God is no respecter of person. He uses whoever He wants to use. Okay? So He wants to use Gideon. And He wants to use you. Question is, are you willing? Was Gideon willing? We see down here that, yeah, he was willing, but there was a few tests he wanted to test God with. Now, but then the Lord said to him, but I will be with you, and you will strike the Midians as one man. And then here's the tests, okay? And think about, I'm going to go ahead and read this, but then think about something. I want you to think about, as I'm reading this, see if you can tell where I'm going, okay? He's saying, and then he said to him, I have found favor in your sight. If I have found favor in your sight, give me a sign that it is you speaking to me. Please not depart from me until I come to you and bring my gift and set it before you. And he said, I will stay until you return. Okay, so this is the test. This is the first test. Think about Gideon's perception. Gideon is saying, I'm the weakest person to do this. But you are saying I'm mighty. Okay? But I'm a weak person, but you saying I'm mighty, okay? So, of course, the human mind is going to say, oh, wait, this isn't from, no, my perception of myself. No, I cannot see myself doing that. I can't. I see myself hiding away. I see myself threshing wheat. I see myself hiding food. I see myself cowering in fear. I see myself whatever, being depressed for the rest of my days, cowering in fear. God says, this is what I want you to do. You're mighty. So of course He's going to say, give me a test. I want to know. I want to know if this is really you. Because my whole thinking, he couldn't wrap his head around. He, as one man, was going to destroy Midian. He could not wrap his head around that. Okay? And God does things for us, doesn't He? Tells us things. God tells us things that He wants us to do. And we can't wrap our mind around that. We can't wrap our mind around the promise of God. But believe me, that promise of God is there. Okay, that promise of God is there. Believe me. Okay, so he says, let's do this test first. So Gideon went and prepared a young goat and unleavened bread from the ephah of flour. He put the meat in a basket and put in the broth in a pot, and brought them out and offered them to him under the oak. The angel of the Lord said to him, take the meat and the unleavened bread, lay them on the rock, pour out the broth. And so he did it. The angel of the Lord reached out the tip of his staff, and that was in his hand, touched the meat and unleavened bread, flat bread. Fire rose out of the rock and consumed the meat and the unleavened bread. Then the angel of the Lord departed from his sight. That was the first test. Is this really you, God? Show me something. Show me something to confirm it. Because I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing it in my own thinking. Show me, Gideon. That's what he's saying. I'm not what you're saying. You don't know who you're talking to here. I'm weak. I'm not mighty. I'm weak. I'm the weakest person in all of Israel, and you're telling me I'm mighty. No, you got it wrong. So show me. Give me a test. So he does it. He does it, and he departs. Now, and so, and the angel of the Lord said to him, take the meat. Okay, we already did that. Okay. So consume the unleavened bread. And the angel of the Lord departed from his sight. Then Gideon perceived that it was indeed an angel of the Lord. Gideon said, alas, O Lord God, I have seen an angel of the Lord face to face. So then he says, okay, this is God. This is God. God identified himself through that. Okay? Through that test, God identified himself. So this is what we're talking about here, okay? We as humans, that's how we react when we have something that we cannot wrap our mind around, and God says, you're mighty. And so no, my perception is, no, I'm the weakest. I'm the weakest. No, there's no way. No way. I don't see myself being that way. I don't see myself doing that. I don't see myself. No. I see myself cowering in fear, depression, and all this stuff. No, not me. No way. No way. God gives us a sign. We say, okay, God, if this is really you saying this, then give me a sign. And God will give me a sign. Because he's God, and he wants us to understand who we are in him. His perception of us versus your perception of yourself, and my perception of myself. Okay? Now. Then the Lord said to him, peace be with you. Do not be afraid, you will not die. Then Gideon built an altar for the Lord, and they called it, the Lord is peace. Even to this day it stands in Ophrah of the Abiezrites. Let's see, of the Abiezrites. And it says, that night the Lord said to him, same day, that night the Lord said to him, take a bull from your father's herd, and a second bull, 7 years old, tear down your father's Baal altar, and cut down the Asherah pole beside it. Now, we'll go on, then I'll comment, because believe me, I've been stewing this in my mind and in my heart for months. But I have comments like crazy about this. But oh man, it's almost 15 minutes already. Man, okay, I get excited about this kind of stuff, so forgive me for that. Okay, but anyway, tear down the Asherah pole, get 2 bulls from your father's herd, and then he goes down and he says, cut down all that stuff, cut all that down. Now I'm going to go over 15 minutes. Is that all right? Is that all right? Because we're at a good part here. Okay. Now listen to something. Now, the altar of Baal and the Asherah pole, the totem pole, it wasn't just there in the middle of the thing. It was his father's. It was Joash's stuff. Gideon, God was asking Gideon to essentially go and defy your father for the Lord. He was telling him, go and defy your father for me. Go and stand up for what is right. Even if it means it's being against your family, against your tribe. Stand up for me. Has God asked you that lately? I hope so. I hope you did. I hope you stood up for him. It says, so Gideon took 10 men from among his slaves and did as the Lord told him. But because he was too afraid the rest of his father's household, he was too afraid of the rest of the father's household and the men of the city to do it by day, he did it at night. Now, we're beginning to see the transformation of Gideon. Okay? We're beginning to see the transformation of, I am a weak person. I am downtrodden. I'm hiding away. I'm living in fear, to possibly beginning to kind of step out, do things. God showed him a sign. He said, give me a sign. God showed him a sign. So he's beginning to step out, and he's beginning to become brave. And that's what happens. That's what has to happen. You understand? That's what has to happen with the whole thing. That's what has to happen. We have to become, as we step out, as you step out in faith and what God has told you to do, you'll become bold in God. You become brave in God. You will become less fearful in God. You'll become less depressed in God. You will be transformed into what God is calling you to do. By what? By what? Is it God saying, okay, I'm going to make you something without you having any control over it? No. God's telling you, here's who you are. Now here's some steps you have to do to get there. Our part is, first off, the want to change. God gives us a motivation. Gideon's motivation was, do you want to live in this dominion forever? Do you want to live in the dominion of Midian and the Amalekites and the people of the east forever? Do you want to have to thresh wheat in a wine press and hide it away for the rest of your life? I don't think so. So that is a question that God has to ask you and I. Do you want to live in the life you're living in for the rest of your life? Do you want to only you and God know your life, okay? If it's great with God, fantastic. But if you need to work with God, if you need to do something, do you want to live like that for the rest of your life? Do you want to live as Gideon lived? Do you want to live like that for the rest of your life? Or do you want God to change something? This is what this is all about. This is what this is all about. This isn't about, this is a great story of God overcoming peoples for Israel. But there's more to it. There's more to it. And it applies to you and I. Do you want to live your life? If you have bad self-esteem, if you have bad self-image of yourself, if you have fear, if you have doubt, if you have all these things, do you want to live like that for the rest of your life? Or do you want God to do something? Okay? And I'm not saying, that it's going to all change by osmosis and God's just going to do it. No. It takes you and God working together. God gives you things to do. You follow through. And that's what Gideon did. Even though he did it at night because he was afraid, it was a beginning. of the man that he became by the end of chapter 7. And there's a chapter 7 for you. So that's my challenge. Continue on, man. Continue. If you don't want to live the way you're living now and you want something better, seek God. Seek His face. Seek Him for yourself. Don't worry about I want to be better for my wife or my husband, or I want to be better for my kids, or I want to be better for my parents, or I want to be better for my friends, I want to be better for my workmates. Don't do it for them. Do it for you. God will take care of the rest. God will take care of the rest of it through you. So that's my challenge. You want change in your life, it's going to take you. It's going to take you obeying God. And so, until next time, it's Pastor Josh saying, keep on keeping on. If you need God to change something, get before Him and allow Him to change it. So until next time, God bless.